There is a version of your life that has been waiting for you. You can feel it, have been able to feel it for some time now. A sense that something fuller, something truer, something with actual weight and texture exists just beyond where you currently stand. And you keep almost reaching it. You keep getting close. Then something pulls you back, and you cannot always name what it is. It just feels like resistance, appearing reliably every time you try to step forward. This pattern has been studied carefully by psychologists who spent their careers working with people in exactly this position. People who had done genuine inner work. People who had faced their shadows, grieved their old selves, dismantled the stories that kept them small. People who were, by every reasonable measure, ready for a richer life. And yet they stayed frozen at the threshold. Something unnamed held them in place. What research and clinical observation found again and again was a single undelivered message. A truth that lives in the body of every person who has done real psychological work, but has not yet stepped into the life that work was supposed to create. A truth so simple it almost sounds like nothing when you hear it. But this one realization has moved people from years of stuckness into lives they barely recognized, working like a key in a lock that everyone had been trying to pick with increasingly complex tools. Here is the pattern that kept appearing. Someone would arrive, broken open by life. A marriage that ended them. A career that hollowed them out. A family system that finally became unbearable. And they would do the work, genuinely. They would face the shadow material, the rage, the grief, the parts of themselves they had spent decades hiding. They would sit with the discomfort of realizing how much of their life had been built on foundations that were never truly theirs. They would let relationships fall away, let identities dissolve, endure the terrifying emptiness that comes after you have stripped away everything false and have not yet built anything true in its place. And then they would arrive at a strange location, a place where the old life was clearly over. They could feel that in their bones. But the new life had not started. They were standing in the gap, the in-between. And this gap could hold people for months, sometimes years, sometimes the rest of their lives. The description was almost identical across different people. I have done the work. I know who I am now. I understand my patterns. I have let go of what needed to go. So why does my life still look like this? Why am I still here? The gap was not a failure of effort. These people had worked harder on themselves than most humans ever will. The gap was a failure of permission. Something inside them, something deep, something pre-verbal, something installed long before they had language to question it, was refusing to let them receive what they had cleared space for. The people stuck at the threshold almost always shared a specific psychological architecture. Somewhere in childhood, they had received a lesson, not usually through words, but through the texture of daily life, that abundance was dangerous, that having too much invited punishment. That visible joy made you a target, that if life got too good, something would follow to balance it out. This was not superstition, though it often wore superstition's clothes. It was survival programming. The child who got excited about something and watched it get taken away. The child who expressed happiness and saw a parent's face darken. The child who learned that the safest emotional position was slightly below okay, because okay was manageable, but good was exposed. Good meant you had something to lose. Good meant someone might notice and decide you did not deserve it. The adults who could not step into rich lives were not lacking courage or insight or readiness. They were obeying an ancient instruction their nervous system had never updated. Stay small. Stay careful. Stay just uncomfortable enough that you do not attract attention. Because attention in the original environment meant danger. This is worth sitting with for a moment, because most people who carry this programming do not know they carry it. They think they want abundance. They visualize it, plan for it, work toward it. But the body, the actual nervous system, has a different agenda. It learned decades ago that expansion equals threat. So every time they approach the threshold of a genuinely rich life, the system activates the old protocol. Anxiety appears from nowhere. Self-sabotage kicks in with surgical precision. They pick a fight, miss a deadline, make the one decision that pulls them back from the edge. And then they blame themselves. They think they are broken or fundamentally incapable of sustaining good things. But the system is working perfectly. It is protecting you from what it still believes is dangerous. The problem is that it is protecting you from a danger that no longer exists, using a map of the world that was drawn when you were very young. This is the first layer of the message. Your stuckness at the threshold is loyalty. Loyalty to an old understanding of safety. Loyalty to a version of reality where staying small kept you alive. That loyalty made sense once. It was a brilliant adaptation to an environment where visibility was punished. But you are not in that environment anymore. And the loyalty that once protected you is now the thing keeping you from the life you have already earned the right to live. There is a second layer that is harder to face. The people stuck at the threshold were not only afraid of external punishment for having a rich life. They were afraid of who they would become if they actually stepped into one. Because stepping into genuine abundance, the kind that includes emotional richness, creative expression, real intimacy, material ease, psychological freedom, requires becoming someone that the original family system would not fully recognize. And that is the deeper terror. The sense that fully inhabiting a rich life means completing a separation that part of you is still refusing to make. The final, irreversible separation from the world you came from. The person you are becoming and the system that shaped you diverge so completely at a certain point that stepping forward means accepting you can never fully go back. You can visit, you can love the people there, but you cannot live in that world anymore because you have outgrown its dimensions. Some part of you, a loyal, grief-stricken, exhausted part, has been standing at the threshold, refusing to complete that separation. This is not about cutting people off. Individuation is not rejection of where you came from. It is the completion of a psychological birth that started when you began questioning the inherited story about who you were supposed to be and what you were supposed to want. You have been in labor with yourself for years. The birth is ready to complete, but completing it means being fully, irreversibly born into your own life. If this work is landing somewhere real in you, there is a link in the description to support this project. These conversations take genuine time and intention to create, and your support helps them continue reaching people who are standing at exactly this threshold. Here is what no one tells you about stepping into a rich life. You will grieve. You will grieve the simplicity of the old world, even if the old world was painful. You will grieve the version of yourself who fit there. You will grieve the relationships that cannot follow you. You will grieve the comfort of being small, because smallness, for all its suffering, was familiar. And familiar has a gravity that abundance does not, especially when your nervous system was calibrated in scarcity. This grief is not a problem. It is the price of admission. The doorway to a rich life passes through grief the way a river passes through a gorge. There is no way around it, only through. The people who stayed in the gap were often people who sensed this grief waiting and unconsciously decided they would rather remain there than feel it. But the grief is finite. It has a bottom. It has an end. The people who let themselves feel it, who stopped running from the sorrow of outgrowing their origins, moved through it faster than they expected. Weeks sometimes, a few months of genuine mourning for the world they were leaving behind. And then something opened. What opened was capacity. Psychological capacity for receiving what had always been available but could not land. Like a harbor that had been blocked by debris. Once the grief cleared the channel, life could actually dock. Opportunities that had been circling started to land. Relationships that matched the new frequency appeared. Creative energy that had been locked in the service of staying small redirected into building something real. Here is where the message sharpens into something you can actually use. You have been mistaking preparation for arrival. You have been doing the inner work, accumulating insight, developing awareness, and assuming that at some point the work itself would deliver you into the rich life. As if enough shadow integration would automatically produce abundance. As if enough healing sessions would eventually generate the life you want, without you having to do something that feels fundamentally different from everything you have done so far. The work was necessary. Every bit of it. You needed to dismantle the false structures, face the shadow, grieve the old identity, understand your patterns. All of that cleared the ground, but clearing ground and building on it are different acts. The second act requires something the first act does not, a willingness to receive without having earned the right through additional suffering. This is where it gets uncomfortable for people who have built their identity around doing the hard work. Because at a certain point, the hard work becomes its own form of avoidance. If you are always processing, always healing, always in the next phase of inner transformation, you never have to face the terrifying simplicity of just allowing good things. Allowing ease. Allowing a life that is not organized around your wound. Some people become so identified with the journey of healing that healing itself becomes the cage. They know how to suffer productively. They know how to face hard truths. They know how to sit with discomfort. What they do not know, what their entire system resists, is how to sit with genuine goodness without waiting for the other shoe to drop. The link in the pinned comment is there for anyone who wants to support this work. Give only if it feels right to you. Here is the message, the one a wise and honest guide would offer if you sat across from them and said you had done the work, but could not cross the threshold. You are not waiting for readiness. You are ready. You have been ready. What you are waiting for is a guarantee that the rich life will not be taken from you the way good things were taken from you before. And that guarantee will never come. It cannot come because life does not offer guarantees of permanence. What life offers, what the self offers if you will let it, is the experience of fullness right now, today, in this body, with these resources, alongside these people, in this imperfect and temporary and astonishing window of being alive. The rich life you have been approaching is not a reward for suffering enough. It is not something you earn by completing one more phase of healing. It is something you allow by making a decision your nervous system has been refusing to make. The decision that you are allowed to have this. That joy is safe. That abundance is survivable. That your life is permitted to be good without catastrophe following close behind. This decision rarely looks dramatic from the outside. Sometimes it is finally saying yes to a relationship the body had been screening out. Sometimes it is raising prices, moving somewhere you have been dreaming about, or simply stopping the constant self-improvement long enough to enjoy what you have already built. The external form varies. The internal shift is always the same. A moment where the old loyalty to smallness releases its grip, and you step forward into a life your earlier self would have found unimaginable. Here is what happened to the people who crossed that threshold. They did not become different people. They became more themselves. The qualities that had been compressed by years of survival, their humor, their creativity, their warmth, their fierceness, their strange and specific way of seeing the world, expanded to fill the space that fear had been occupying. They became vivid, particular, fully inhabited humans. People who laughed more than they expected to, who built things that surprised them, who attracted people and circumstances that matched the frequency they had been too afraid to broadcast. The richness being described here was never primarily financial, though financial ease was often part of it. The richness was experiential, sensory, relational, creative. The richness of waking up in a life that actually fits, where your daily existence reflects your inner reality instead of contradicting it, where you do not spend every evening recovering from a day that violated your values, where the people around you actually see you, and you do not have to perform a version of yourself to maintain the connection. That is the rich life. And it has been waiting for you to stop believing you need one more breakthrough before you deserve it. There is one warning worth offering here, because honesty demands it. The first weeks of a rich life feel wrong. The nervous system calibrated for struggle will interpret ease as danger. You will feel anxious when things go well. You will look for the hidden threat in good news. You will catch yourself creating problems because problems feel familiar and you know how to navigate them, while ease is uncharted territory that makes you feel exposed. This is normal. It is the nervous system catching up with the psychological shift you have made. The only way through it is repetition. Repeated experiences of good things that do not end in punishment. Repeated moments of ease that do not collapse into catastrophe. Repeated evidence that you can survive what you have been reaching toward. That your body can eventually accept what your mind already knows. That you are allowed to be here in the rich life, living it every day. Think of a plant that has been growing in a dark room suddenly being placed in sunlight. The plant does not immediately thrive. It wilts a little first. The intensity of what it has been reaching toward its entire existence is initially overwhelming. But the plant does not need to return to the dark room. It needs to stay in the light long enough for its biology to adapt. And then it does not just recover. It becomes what it was always capable of becoming. You have been in the dark room. You have done the extraordinary, lonely, often brutal work of growing in conditions that were not designed for your flourishing. The light is now available. The door is open. The rich life is right there. And every cell in your body that learned to associate darkness with safety is telling you to hesitate, to wait, to make sure, to do one more round of preparation. Stop preparing. Start living. The readiness you are waiting to feel is something that only develops after you have stepped through the door. You do not feel ready and then move. You move and then discover you were ready all along. The shadow work, the grief, the identity deaths, the relationships that ended, the ground that dissolved beneath you, all of it was preparation for this. All of it was clearing space for a life that required more room than the old structures could provide. The room is made now. The clearing exists. And standing in a clearing you have spent years creating while refusing to build anything in it, that is the only real waste. Everything else was necessary. The pain was necessary. The confusion was necessary. The long season of in-between was necessary. But its time is over. You know it is over. You have known for a while. So here is the one truth that unlocks the door you have been standing in front of. You survived the worst of your life with half your resources and none of your awareness. Consider what becomes possible now that you have both. The rich life was never about arriving somewhere new. It was about finally letting yourself inhabit the place your transformation has already brought you. You are here. You have been here. The only thing left is to stop leaving. Stay.